Hello and welcome to the Boiler Up Podcast Football Edition. I am Casey Bartley. I'm joined here by Jellison and our newest Boiler Upload member, Israel Schuman. Welcome, boys. How we doing?
Doing great. Excited.
Good.
I love how neither of you changed a single octave in your answer. We're starting off high energy. Obviously, we're good together here. We are just 11 days away from football. Both you gentlemen today got to watch a little practice. Ryan Walters is trusting you guys a little more, getting you a little more access into what you can watch compared to last year, where it was pretty much secrets the whole way. I think you got like 3 or 4 sessions at best. I think we'll just start with you, Dub. What have you seen from this team that is different from last year's squad?
I think that it started at Big Ten Media Days where it just felt like they were a little more motivated. You can tell in Ryan Walters' voice, he was pissed off about being picked 18th out of 18 teams in the Big Ten poll. So I think they have a lot more energy and, the coaches have alluded to that several times where they're talking about like, yeah, we're not having to coach energy or effort or instinct or anything like that this year. Kind of throwing some shade at some of the guys from last year. And like obviously we don't get to see them live and do an 11 on 11, but I think they got a lot better athletes at the skill positions. Offensive line obviously has improved. The secondary has really impressed me so far, just in terms of how much they've improved and the bodies that they've added. So I think the roster's improved. It's just gonna, depend on that gauntlet of a schedule, which I know we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Israel, your first fully written thing went up today, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you did try to read that, you do have to be a subscriber on Boiler Upload. Not a better time to do it than right now, where you get 60% off. So I think it's like $40 for a whole year. That gives you access to the entire Rivals network. That means if you're curious about what's going on in the IU board, you shouldn't be, but if you are, you can go over there, look at that. You can go see everything in the Rivals network, keep up to date with all the recruiting news, football, basketball, all that good stuff. Israel, just you kind of wrote about the preparedness in this time of year for Purdue. What is Walters and his guys looking for in these, next 11 days until the season starts?
Yeah, well, he said they would get going on the I-State prep tomorrow. So, they're kind of banged up right now at the secondary of all things, which is probably the area where they can show the most growth with Thieneman, All-American, preseason All-American, 5-star coming in. And just and then the Georgia transfer as well. So they should really be better there. But so health is a big area. And I asked him whether any of his units were ahead. I tend to think that defense usually comes out a little stronger. So he didn't really bite, but I would assume the offense needs to click a little bit with all those new receivers and but I guess the good news is Hudson's back, so that'll be interesting to see how he does against Indiana State. He should hopefully just rip them apart like O'Connell did 2 years ago. So,
yeah, you could argue last year that the defense was kind of a disappointment early on at times. There was or wasn't a change up in the way coaching was done, which involved Kevin Kane going up into the upper coaches area to watch the game from up there. And that did kind of buoy the defense towards the end of the season. But as far as that offense, Hudson Carden's back. Dub, is the talent that Purdue fans might not be familiar with, is that enough to cover up for the known talent that went out the door with transfers, graduates everywhere, especially in that wide receiver room?
Yeah, I feel like we all forgot about Jamal Edrin at the end of last year when everyone's talking about, oh, what'd they get in the portal? They still got 3 guys out of the portal as far as receivers go. But Jamal Edrin, I think he can be something very special. I think he could be an NFL guy. And he's got everything that you want. Size, speed, great route runner. and he makes contested catches, which is something that, when we've been able to watch some one-on-ones, although they're brief, I mean, you can see that. Like, he can go up and rip it away from guys. So I mean, first and foremost, he's going to be their number one guy. CJ Smith, I mean, he's banged up. He's got a hamstring issue. And we saw that with Rondale Moore a few years ago. You never know how those things are going to shake out. So I know they're hoping for him to be back by the Notre Dame game. But he's another guy, might be the fastest guy on the team now, surpassing Thieneman. Definitely has more burst than Deion Burks. But he's a guy that is going to be a legit deep ball threat. Nylon Morissette and Cam Brown, I think that they can do some really good work out of the slot. Cam Brown, this was his first practice today. So I still think that they're going to kind of bring him along slowly. And then, someone who's seldomly talked about is Jerron Tibbs.
He looked really good at the end of the season. Little bit of work, and he looked really good.
I think Jerron Tibbs can be a very serviceable player for Purdue this year. So him, and then another guy who's kind of turned into what's the video game called? EA Sports College Football 25. I don't have a
mouth.
Hold on, you not having it is mind blowing to me. You are right in the radius.
Don't get me started. I'm very upset that I don't have it yet. But Andrew Sawinski has turned into like a star on there. Like, people are turning him into an All-American on there. But I do think that he'll actually have a role with Purdue this year. And then Armand Branch, uber athletic kid. I don't think he's quite ready to be in that starting group. But and then the last guy, Shamar Rigby, he's really impressed them. Coach Walters talked about it today. True freshman, and he was another guy that kind of flew under the radar. But I think he'll be a part of the regular rotation as well. But they've added size and speed, which is something that they severely lacked last year. Deion Burks is probably better suited in the slot, and he was forced to go outside. You had Yassine, who, I mean, he's a very reliable pass catcher, but he didn't quite have the burst. He's sure-handed, and he made some plays during the first part of the year, and then as has been his career, he got hurt halfway through the year. And then TJ Sheffield, I think he had some speed and quickness to him, but he could just never really put it together. And he's kind of in the same boat as Deion Burks was, kind of forced to play outside. So I think Purdue massively upgraded that receiver position.
Yeah, it's a lot of unknowns, so it's hard to really know, but there's definitely talent there.
Yeah.
Two sure things in the backfield. And then you have Hudson Carden at quarterback. Obviously, you feel pretty good about what he showed, especially when he was playing well towards the end of last year. But I think there might be a bigger question that we touched on a little bit earlier this week in our roundtable. Israel, what defines success early for this Purdue team? Obviously, the non-conference is tough when you look away from Indiana State, but in the first 4 games, they've got Notre Dame, they've got to go to Oregon State, and then they host Nebraska. What does Purdue need to do going into Wisconsin schedule-wise to set themselves up for this season?
Well, they've got that really weird week 2 bye,
Mm-hmm.
which will help them out on the health front,
Yeah.
but will be a little bit of a different thing than they've had before. But I mean, you can't have 3 losses going into Wisconsin. I mean, Notre Dame, you could probably put that one down. Oregon State, they'll be underdogs probably, especially on the road there. But it's possible. And then you've got Nebraska. So I mean, there's a scenario where if the cards don't fall right, you're 1-4 on a, or 1-3 on a 3-game losing streak heading into your Wisconsin games. So that would be the disaster scenario, because you're probably not winning in Madison either.
What?
And then, I mean,
what do you mean? It's only been like 25 years.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, I think winning Oregon State would be huge. If that doesn't happen, you'd like to pull an upset against Nebraska. I mean, it's at home, it's homecoming homecoming night. It's, you could definitely do it, and Purdue's an upset team. And then I think if they could not get throttled by Notre Dame, look a little better than they did against, Michigan last year, look kind of like they did against Ohio State for 3 quarters. I think if they were able to do that against Notre Dame, that would be actually pretty promising there in just the second game of the season.
Dub, does Purdue need to be 3-1 going into Wisconsin to get to a bowl?
Pretty close. Pretty close. Pretty close. Because I think, if you're kind of chalking up the Indiana State game as a win, if they somehow lose that game, we're going to have
We're
lot
having
bigger to
Yeah, we're
talk
having a
about.
different conversation.
So, kind of chalk that one down. Notre Dame, I think, one of the biggest keys for them this season is stealing one of those 4 games against, projected college football playoff teams, right? Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, Penn State. You got to steal one. You got 3 of them at home. So can you get some spoiler maker magic going? That's going to be a question. If you can get Notre Dame at home early, that changes the whole trajectory of the season. Now,
there is not a worse Purdue pun than spoiler maker. There's no way for it not to sound disgusting. Just putting it out there.
They like it. They like it. And it worked. It's worked for them.
It has.
Obviously, Notre Dame's gonna be heavily favored. And I still think Oregon State's a very gettable game. They lost so much, and they've undergone this massive transition where the head coach at his alma mater leaves for the Big Ten. They're out in no man's land. All this talent's gone. Now, maybe they're going to be inspired by that and come out and win 19 games. You tip your cap to them. But as of right now, I just don't know that Oregon State's going to be as tough a game as it would have been when you look at their last 2 years when they were a top 25 team, right? And then something to think about with Nebraska, Dylan Raiola is likely going to be their starting quarterback. This will be his first true road game at Purdue. So he's 5-star kid, top 5 in the country, obviously. People expect him to be the savior of Nebraska, but how many times have we heard that? So
sold out Ross-Ade Stadium for the entire season. Purdue football on the rise.
And I think it's homecoming that weekend, right? Like Israel said.
Yeah, Nebraska, yeah.
So homecoming, the place is going to be rocking. It is a noon game, so it's not a night game. I
wish it was a night game.
Night games.
I thought that too.
Yeah. But still, Raiola, we don't know what he's going to look like. A lot of people are saying he looks special, but how many times have we heard that Nebraska's having a special quarterback and, this is finally their year. So I think they're a huge unknown. There's a lot of teams on Purdue's schedule that are just unknown. Like, I think Indiana could be 8 and 8.
Don't.
I think they could. I truly believe that.
Why?
They have a very favorable schedule.
Okay. So you're drinking the Kurt custard.
Yeah. I think that's their cat, though.
I think he's obnoxious.
He is, but he wins. The results speak for themselves.
Winning and winning at IU, way different things.
That's true as well.
But if you look at Purdue's schedule past Wisconsin, Illinois on the road, Northwestern at home, East Lansing, Michigan State, maybe, and IU. That's 4 winnable games. Israel, if you do pick one of those upsets you mentioned, Ohio State, Penn State at home, Oregon at home, or Wisconsin on the road, what when you putting your money on?
Well, Wisconsin's the weakest of that group. There's
dark magic in Madison.
Dark magic in Madison, and that means that Purdue is due. Purdue is due. After 25, That would be the one. I just it helps that the others are at home. Oregon's at home at least, and Penn State. But Wisconsin's beatable, and honestly, I think a lot of their whatever hype they do have heading into this year is kind of just a holdover. That they weren't impressive last year. And I mean, I think it's easy to think Wisconsin, easy to think they'll turn it around. It's been a great program for, probably since I was born.
I was going to ask
But
when you were born. Like, have you ever seen Purdue beat Wisconsin?
yeah, no, well, not in Madison. My eyes have never witnessed that. But if I had to pick one, gun to my head, this year is the year that I witnessed that.
That's sad. I didn't want to put those stakes on you because like it's not going to happen. Purdue might never win at Madison again, like ever. It just
I
won't
don't know.
happen.
Well, not if Taylor Swift releases another album week of.
She releases an album like every 5 months. Like it hasn't helped.
Right.
It hasn't helped. There's
I
a
will
better
say-
chance that Purdue leaves college football in general. The Big Ten kicks them out and they never play them again than maybe winning in Madison.
I will say it's the same scenario with Kentucky and Florida. Florida ripped off like 30 straight, and Kentucky's beating them 4 out of the last 5. So not impossible.
I want to see Purdue with Jared Lorenzo type quarterbacking. That's what we need to turn the tides. All right. So we did talk, we're bouncing back and forth here. Deb, what is going on with the offensive line at Purdue? It was maybe the biggest story throughout the season last year. You've got, fourth string golfers playing offensive tackle. You've got guys with like no knees that have like 80 pounds of knee braces on, just gutting it out. Is it the same thing this year? More talent? What is the state of Purdue's offensive line right now?
Well, it's definitely not as dire as how they ended last year, obviously. The one guy that's really banged up that's the projected starter is Corey Stewart, tackle from Ball State. He's a guy that they're really high on. And once Ryan Walters said that he anticipates him being back for Indiana State, that'll be a big get for them. But, they brought in him and DJ Wingfield were their top 2 offensive line transfers as far as this year goes, right? And DJ Wingfield's probably going to slide in at right guard. And then you bring back Marcus Bowe, who played very well at right tackle last year. Missed the second half of the year after the leg injury at Iowa. Gus Hartwig, Steady Eddie, anchoring things in the middle. And then there's a little bit of a battle between Mohamed Musa and Jalen Grant for that left guard spot, which I think it says a lot that Musa's not going to be starting, or potentially is not starting after starting most of the last 2 years at left tackle, right? I think that just kind of speaks to the caliber of guys and then the depth of guys that they brought in as well. I mean, you got Joey Tanona, who, albeit he's recovering from a very serious car accident, he was a top 100 player coming out of high school. I think he could factor into things. I still think he's probably a year away from really getting his starting opportunity. And you got a bunch of guys. You got Jaquan Bolden, the JUCO guy.
Giant man.
He's huge. Bakeem Coley, he's a guy that I wanted to mention. He's a former basketball player. I remember when he committed, there wasn't much known about him, right? But he's packed on weight this year, and they really like him. He was getting reps with the first team line in the absence of Corey Stewart today. So he's another guy, Luke Griffin, and then obviously whoever doesn't start out of Musa and Jalen Grant. So I truly think that they're 10 deep this year. Obviously offensive linemen getting hurt is part of the game, but they're in a much better spot than they were a year ago.
Yeah, if it goes last year, I mean, 10 deep wasn't enough. There were times where they played third, fourth string guys. Israel on the other side of the ball, Ryan Walters, hired as a defensive coach. Kind of back and forth his first season. obviously that secondary, despite having Dylan Thieneman, was a concern. Is there reason for optimism that the second year under Walter's system brings them some new guys? Are there bright spots on the defense that make you think Purdue can be a little more consistent on that side of the ball this year?
Well, the most interesting thing I'd say is that they're moving away from their biggest strength, which was Nic Scourton and Kydron Jenkins off the edges last season. They'll have neither of them now. Kydron's gonna actually be a middle linebacker, which is interesting. And we talked a little bit today about that at practice, and just how imposing he'll be for literally any running back in the country that unfortunately has the task of blocking him. It's going to be scary. So, I mean, it'll be cool to see what he does from there. Walters thinks that he'll be fine moving around and in pass coverage and things, which was the biggest thing there. So, I think that's just a matter of getting your best, probably your best defensive playmaker, just in as much real estate, as many ways to cause havoc as possible. It's kind of the whole way this defense operates. So that'll be different. And then Thieneman has some help, or should have some help, this season. Like I said, they've got Nyland Green, or they've got CJ. No, Nyland Green. I get the Georgia guys mixed up all the time. Nyland Green back there, and then they've got the 5-star Kyle Bodie. So they're gonna be a lot better. And you'd like to see Thieneman be able to focus on run stopping a little more this year than with that help. And I think that could change some things, because there were some bad tackle angles taken from the secondary last year that just were some backbreakers. So I think those areas, they could be improved. What would they give up last year? Like 30 points a game, or?
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah. He mentioned
only way to go.
Hopefully he goes down. Just a
Well,
little down. Yeah. Deb, he mentioned Nic Scourton. And that's a lot of sacks that Purdue lost when he left the portal. Do you find that, obviously Nic Scourton, a very good player, but is there something about Walters and his scheme that he will be able to manufacture? Maybe not the exact same amount of stats or with one guy, but it really did seem he was very good at creating one-on-ones with his key guys on defense. Is that something you expect, a surprise name to jump out on the sack leaderboard for them?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, right? Because, Nic Scourton, he's going to be a first-round pick in my mind. I've seen him get mocked as high as like 7 or 8. And I think that would have stayed the same had he stayed at Purdue another year. Kydron Jenkins somehow is not an all Big Ten player, beyond me. But he really had a breakout year as well. He had never done anything like that, like we saw last year. So I think it is a very advantageous position for guys. And Will Helt is a guy that Walters named him today as one of those dudes that's really impressed him. Like, they had high hopes for him going into year 2. But they're calling him like the Terminator and a monster and all these names just because, he's really come into his own, put weight on. And he's kind of the prototype for what they want there, playing that buck spot. So I think, he's probably the top option in terms of leading the sack charge. And then obviously CJ Madden, he's another guy who kind of fits that same mold, a little bigger, but he's a little faster as well. So he's a guy that they're really excited about. And then beyond them, Sheeta Sila, they really love him. I know, he's an all name team.
Great name.
They really love his ability to be able to play the run and the pass. He's a guy that I don't necessarily see him popping out with 8, 9, 10 sacks, but I think he could really make a difference in tackles for loss and getting into the backfield and impacting the run game. Jaira Ojada, he's another guy that they brought in from, it technically wasn't the portal because he's a D3 guy, but from Franklin College, and he was an All-American there. He's a guy that's kind of slowly been coming along with this big step up in competition, but I think he's another guy who, he can play that kind of Scotty Humpich role where you come in and you get some snaps, kind of get some pressures, but I don't see him necessarily being as productive as Helton and Madden.
One name we haven't really heard is Yanni Karloftis, just hanging out there when I was at practice this summer. Definitely a name in the coaching staff, someone that I felt got a lot more comfortable. He's moved all around the defense at his time at Purdue, just starting to get some experience. Obviously, the pedigree is there with him. Israel, as we wind this down, what are you looking for in the next 2 weeks as Purdue prepares for their season opener? What's either a question or something you want to see or find out about in the next 2 weeks that will help you kind of prepare yourself for what Purdue's going to be this season?
Well, I mean, I think it's cliche, but I want to see Hudson Card. I want to see if he can make a jump, because really a little bit would go a long way from his position. And you saw last year, especially it was the Wisconsin game where they were in it and he just couldn't quite finish a drive, keep a drive going. Couldn't get the big play. So his deep ball has always been great. It's more been that, can you throw the 20, 25, 30-yard post route down the field in a tight window? And he really couldn't last year. So I want to get more confirmation that the offense will be able to keep them in games if the defense is really improved. A truly decent offense compared to the rest of the Big Ten could be a huge step up.
Yeah, I'm curious because during the season, Hudson Card there were like 3 different forms of Hudson Card. There was the good, healthy gunslinging. There was the injured game manager. And then there was the guy who showed up for, I think it was the Nebraska game, where it was just, you could tell he had no trust in the offensive line, didn't seem to be comfortable anywhere in the offense, really suffered his play. Is that something you think this offensive line is going to cure him of, or is it just maybe experience gets him to a point where we will see good Hudson Card most nights?
I think
Well,
who'd you ask?
Duh, but if Israel wants to jump in, no.
Go ahead, Dave. If I have anything, I'll add it.
I think that's the anticipation in the locker. And the first time we talked to Hudson, we asked him about the offensive line. He lit up. We asked Reggie Love about the offensive line.
Instead of getting lit up, which is what happened last year a lot.
When we asked Reggie Love, he lit up. Ryan Walters has lit up. He even let out a little sigh, like, yeah, we finally got a group up there. So I think it's, and some of the receivers like Jerron Tibbs mentioned that, they didn't have the right tools and pieces around him last year. And I think that, at least on paper, right, we haven't seen how they're going to do when the bolts start flying, but on paper, both of those groups are improved. And Hudson Card being healthy, we saw what he's capable of those last 2 starts. Basically flawless against Minnesota and IU. And those are the types of performances I was expecting from day one out of him last year. When he came in and he's getting talked up and everything like that. And then, I think those injuries really took a toll on him more than a lot of not necessarily us, but like casual fans
Right.
weren't necessarily in the know or didn't know what was going on. I think that hurt him a lot more than was led to believe. And obviously he missed the Northwestern game in between his last 2 starts. So getting him healthy, getting him a big, strong offensive line that can really, really move some guys and protect him and give him time is going to be huge. And then I know Israel mentioned it a minute ago, but finishing drives, I think that big offensive line is going to help finishing those 3rd and 1s, those 3rd and goals, those 4th and goals that Purdue just seemingly couldn't have an answer for last year, right? So I think if the offensive line plays as is expected, Hudson Card is going to be the biggest beneficiary.
Yeah, that touches on, it'll be the last question before we go to predictions. But Israel, Reggie Love and Devin Mockabee are in the backfield, maybe the most talented backfield that's not going to be playing in the playoffs in the Big Ten. And it really seemed like Graham Harrell's offense towards the end of the season really leaned on that dual Tyrone Tracy, Devin Mockabee, two-man backfield. Is that the secret for Purdue's success this year? Winning the running game, controlling a game with their ability to move the sticks, play action, everything that they were doing well, especially those last two games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the go-to is you guys aren't very air raidy. You run the ball a lot. And I'm sure they get tired of hearing that one because they really just where the talent lies. They got it at running back, and Reggie Love is a lot different from Tyrone Tracy, but both very good running backs. And Tracy, I think heading into the year, the expectation was that he'd be an outlet guy, operate in the flat and be dynamic from there. But I mean, really, he did. I mean, there's a reason he went 5th round in the NFL draft off that 1 year sample. He was a really good runner, and so is Reggie Love. So that is the similarity there, and I think it's especially great for a team and for with Hudson, just knowing that you can lean on that running back room to control a game sometimes, especially against some weaker fronts. Not that they're going to see a lot of those, but if they need to, they can just feed the ball there and be fine. So
yeah, it's kind of wild.
Something that people forget.
Oh, sorry, cut you off.
No,
it's kind of wild that half of Iowa's offense just doesn't end up at Purdue next season. 2 for 2. They have made themselves into NFL players just from that jump. All right. So let's move around to now our final question I'll ask you guys. Give us your projections, Purdue season next year. Obviously, it is a tough one. Once again, starts with Indiana State on August 31st. And to stay up to track on everything you will want for football and the upcoming basketball season, sign up now, 60% off, boilerupload.com, part of the Rivals Network. So, Dub, what is your projection for Purdue next season?
Like record prediction.
Record prediction.
I'm gonna go with a clean 5-7.
Oh, so close.
Last year I went like 7-6. I'm not, and it's just because this schedule is so daunting. Like I said, there's so many unknowns. There's some teams that, Wisconsin, can they get back to the Wisconsin old, win 10 games? Could IU be much improved? Which I think would be could they pull off Northwestern really? Have that type of turnaround? How's Northwestern going to look after winning 8 games last year, right? I think they're going to, like the 5 games that we talked about, or 4 games, excuse me, with Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, and IU. I think they're going to win 3 of those. I think they're going to slip up because, they had a lot of games last year where you look at the schedule and you're like, yeah, Purdue should beat this team. And they came out on the wrong side of those decisions, right? And, I talked about this a few weeks ago, but, their biggest issue last year, I felt, was their inability to etch out those close wins. They had three games where you can make a very compelling argument that they should have won the games. Obviously, that's just football, and the ball doesn't always bounce your way. But had they won those 3 games, we're having a completely different conversation, right? So I don't think they're as far away. But having a top 10 hardest schedule in the country is it's a lot to overcome. So on 5-7.
5-7. Israel, same question.
Well, it's not like there's a whole ton of numbers to spit out here, but I'll say 6-6. Get that bowl. Optimistic side. I mean, you've seen the spoiler maker in the past, and it's been a couple years since they delivered one of those truly raw sage shaking upsets. And this team's supposed to be better than last year. I believe it. they look better. And they get like we said, they get some of those teams at home. So you never know what can happen when truly one of the best crowds in the Big Ten every night or day in the case of the homecoming game. That's a day game. Though that crowd can carry them, and so let's say they get one of those. Let's say they get the Nebraska one, like I want them to think that they could. That puts them right on the path, and they just got to take care of business. Maybe they drop one somewhere else. They can hopefully pick it up either, against Oregon State, Madison, like we talked about. So there are pathways. It's a daunting schedule, but I think it could happen.
I am with Israel. I think it'll be 6-6. My optimism is it's really hard to build a program in 8 months. And that's pretty much, that's being generous on how much time he had. It's really about 6-7 months that he had to build the team last year. So when you talk inconsistency, lack of depth, injuries, everything they went through to finish the season the way they did, I'm optimistic. I think Graham Harrell didn't do a very good job in the first half of the season with that offense. And I thought he really started to gel, had his guys buy in. I mean, you give them that, but like, it's really hard to coach an offense when you can't trust your offensive line to do basic stuff. I think this year, everyone's set up in a way better situation to be successful, to win some of those close games, have a chance in some of the big upsets. I think Purdue wins their last 2 games, Michigan State and Indiana. I think Walters rallies them late to get to that bowl eligibility, take him to his first bowl game. And I don't think any of us disagrees that would be with this schedule, a major success for year 2 under Walters.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, so I think we're all pretty close. Like, difference between honestly 4 and 7 wins is a couple plays a game, some bad luck, some good luck, a flag here or there. So, I think regardless, there needs to be some patience still, because it was a major. The cupboards were very bare when Walters took over still, and it's college football is a weird thing to build out of now. But there's definitely been some good signs. And if they get anywhere to 5 wins or more, really good job with the schedule, I think. All right. Is there anything else from you, Dub or Israel, that you missed this week? Obviously, we'll be back next week to preview Indiana State Sycamores. We'll be doing it all week. In print, digital, podcasts, all that good stuff. But anything we missed about just an overview on the preview for this season?
I don't think so, really. I think we touched on everything. I'm just ready to get to
it. Yeah. We talked about Hudson's game against Minnesota. I looked up his passer rating in that game, and it was 190.3. And that hurts my brain because I didn't even know it could go that high. So it's going to be about getting closer there and not the 64 or whatever he had against, I don't know. I think that was Syracuse or something. But
yeah, I mean, every quarterback needs play action, but I definitely think when the offense started to find a groove with the running game, that allowed Hudson the space and timing to find his targets. I definitely think there is a offense to be unleashed in West Lafayette. But if that's all, thanks for Dub, Israel, for showing up today talking. Thank you for watching. This has been the Boiler Up Podcast.